Sports, and this is Global Eye, your window to the world straight from Tel Aviv. Now, we're going to be travelling around the globe for the next hour together to give you every story you need to know. Well, on tonight's show, the Biden administration is heading to the Supreme Court in a bid to have the controversial Texas abortion ban scrapped. A new pill to treat COVID is set to hit the market, being hailed as a game changer. And new findings in feces show our ancestors were enjoying blue cheese and beer almost 3,000 years ago. But before we get into any of that, let's start right here in Israel. What's the buzz? These are today's most trending stories. Well, 3 people have been arrested over an alleged connection to cold case murders from the 80s and 90s, with the trio from a Hasidic cult led by a convicted sex offender. Now, the arrests are in relation to the murders of Nissim Shetrit, a 17-year-old boy who was reportedly beaten to death by religious police, and also that of 41-year-old Avi Edrei back in 1990, who was found beaten to death in a forest north of Jerusalem. Now, the 3 faced court a little earlier today with most of the details of the investigation under gag order. Well, Israel says it's ramping up enforcement of its Green Pass system, with all facilities who need to use the pass required from today to scan the digital passes at the door. Now, it comes as the infection rate and case numbers continue to drop, with the latest figures showing the rate of positive tests at 1.6, with the number of active patients dropping to below the 20,000 mark. Well, as it stands, almost 4 million people have had 3 doses, with the number of fatalities from COVID here in Israel just shy of 8,000. Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that if you have a driver's license, you've had issues fitting into parking spots. Well, that may become a thing of the past with a new Israeli-made electric car that's able to fit, shrink and make itself go inside parking spots. Well, City Transform was launched back in 2014 with a new partnership announced between the car company and emergency medical response organisation United Hatzalah to incorporate the folding vehicles into their fleet. Well, they're able to contract the wheelbase right down to 1 metre, although the cabin stays the same size, meaning that passengers won't be crushed. Well, Israel's government ministers have approved a bill expanding the power of Israeli police in the Arab sector, allowing them to carry out house searches without prior court warrant. Well, the move comes as the alarm bells are ringing, with more than 100 murders within the Arab community in Israel already this year, with Prime Minister Naftali Bennett declaring, "We are losing the country." Well, it comes as a lack of policing is being blamed for the spiralling violence, with a record number of murders in the last few months. And joining me here in studio to talk more about the issue is Yosef Haddad, who's an activist and the CEO of Together for Each Other, which is an organisation that works to build a bridge and divide between Jews and Arabs. Yosef, thank you so very much for coming in this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Firstly, tell me, what can we put this down to? I mentioned, a lack of policing. That's one thing that people are saying, but what are the other issues at play here?
No, so basically we need to talk about 3 categories that if we deal with them, then we might see some sort of reduce in the violence in our community, in the Israeli Arab community. And we're talking about education, we're talking about justice, court, and we're talking about the police. What I'm trying to say here is that today, when we, even if the Israeli Arab population cooperate with the police, and let's say even if the police do their job, okay, and arrest that person, when it arrives to the court, what happened at the bottom line is that instead of that person who, for instance, stabbed someone but didn't kill him, instead of getting 5-6 years in jail, he would get 1 year in jail that he can actually do that as a community service or less than that. Which means as long as there's no harsher punishment on those criminals, on those people who have illegal weapons, on those families that terrorize our society, we will not advance and we will not see that in our society the violence will be reduced.
So Yosef, tell me, how long has this problem really been in the making here?
So what we're talking about, the fact is that every year we see an increase of the death in our society. Now, out of the 100 deaths that we saw in our society, 15 of them were actually by the police, but some of them are justified because they attacked the police. Some of them, there's questionable things about them. But so the total right now is we're talking about 85 Arab Israelis who killed Arab Israelis. This number is still going from year to year. So we do have a problem, and we do need to fix it. But that's why I brought also the category of education, because as long as we think that everything is okay and we don't really talk about the core of the issue and the problem, which is how we educate our younger generation and how we teach them not to resolve problems with violence, but actually by negotiating without violence, by talking, by trying to reach a solution without, gun or any kind of weapon. And I think this is the important thing, that the Ministry of Education needs to sit down with the Israeli Arab leaders and find a program to put it in all classes, from first class until, older.
For sure, keep it going throughout, the school system and
Definitely.
the education system. And Yosef, tell me, what is your organisation and what sort of work does it do?
So Together Vouch for Each Other is an Arab-Israeli organization. The whole idea is actually to bridge gaps between Jews and Arabs, but also to work on a better society, better Israeli society, and especially better Arab-Israeli society. We want to connect the Arab-Israeli society closer to the Israeli society and be integral part of this country and this society. The problem is, when we established and founded this organization, despite the fact that we're not a political organization, we did it because of our political leaders. Our political leaders are not doing enough for us. They're shouting Palestine, they're shouting Gaza, they're shouting Ramallah, they're shouting Jenin, and not shouting Nazareth, Rahat, Shfa'amer, and Lod. And this is also something that we're seeing today with the crimes and the violence. Where are our leaders? Where are they?
Yeah.
And that's why eventually we said, we are going to first treat our society. We come first, then somebody else later.
Well, it's certainly a problem that needs urgent action. Yosef Hadad, thank you so very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Now, after a bombshell revelation by a former Israeli official saying former Israeli Prime Minister and President, the late Shimon Peres, sexually harassed her, a second former official has made a similar accusation. But, as Eli Hockenberg explains, there may be a complex view on sexual misconduct in the past that's being presented here.
A stain on his legacy, a second accusation of sexual misconduct against the late Shimon Peres. A former senior official says she too was sexually harassed by the former Israeli Prime Minister and President. This following an all-out expose of former lawmaker and diplomat Colette Avital, who worked closely with Peres and says she was harassed by him on 2 different occasions decades ago.
There were reactions that hurt me. I'm not immune. There was also slime. There were also those who came and said, why does she remember now, after 30 years? I didn't suddenly remember because I remembered all the time. These are things that cannot be forgotten, and I did not do it for a headline.
The second testimony by the unnamed former official, revealed on Israel's version of Meet the Press, says Peres pinned her to the wall and put his hand under her shirt, and when asked to stop, he didn't, until she pushed him away.
It's unfortunate, but there have probably been cases like this. I'm not trying to justify anyone, and even if in me it left very difficult memories. But we're talking about a time when men thought they were allowed to. Not saying that was the norm, but it was a way.
Avital, however, seeks to present a more complex outlook on sexual misconduct in the past, saying it should not wash out all the good things Peres has done.
I do not deny the fact that we owe our security to this person, that I really believed in his vision and his optimism, and I appreciate him. So I knew how to make separations.
Short break, don't go anywhere.